Welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. There might be love in the air today, and 14 years ago to this very date, a lot of Aberdeen fans had love for a certain former player. We are delighted, Calum, to be joined by none other than Josh Walker on today's episode.
First of all, Josh, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, lads. I'm good. How are you?
Not so bad, not so bad. We'll get things kicked off. First of all, Josh, you were born in Newcastle, a city that lives and breathes football. I think that's fair to say, and we've seen that very recently with the takeover, etc. But it was Middlesbrough that first signed you and got you into professional football in 2002. How did that come about? And were they sort of the only club interested, or was there ever a chance of you going on to play for Newcastle?
When it first happened, the first club to come in for us was Middlesbrough. I was about 8-year-old at the time. And we just started playing boys club football around that age. And we'd been playing for a couple of weeks, and there was me and another lad who Middlesbrough had approached and asked us to go for like a 6-week trial at the time. There wasn't academies then, it was School of Excellence. So you could still play with your boys club and play games for Middlesbrough and things like that. And then I think I was about 10-year-old when it became an academy. So that was when you had to ditch your boys club and play just for your academy. That was it. But working through the levels at Middlesbrough, I had a lot of opportunities to go to Newcastle. Certainly from, I'd say, probably 13 to 16 and leaving school. Had a lot of opportunities to go elsewhere, not just Newcastle, but a lot of big clubs in England and abroad. But it was just how I was treated Middlesbrough and where I was in my development. And Steve McLaren was the manager at the time, and I was just loved by him, and he promised us I would be in the first team that season. I would be involved right from the off, and I thought it was just too good of an opportunity not to stay, and I thought it would be the best thing for us. And I still think it was the best decision at that time. But obviously looking back and the way things panned out in the end, I would have loved to have played for Newcastle, definitely.
Is that kind of something, when you look back on, I know with hindsight you said, maybe at the time it was the right decision, staying with Middlesbrough. Do you think that's hard for, maybe kids coming through nowadays when they're maybe not at an academy of the team they support, having that mental strength to stay with a club that actually benefits them, further down the line than just being like, I just want to sign for Aberdeen, my favourite team. That's where I'm going.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is. It's hard for them these days, and it's also hard for the parents as well. Because my parents, my family were all from Newcastle, and it would have been so much easier for them to take me to Newcastle training 5 minutes away, than travel an hour 3 times, 4 times a week. But they were never pushy towards that. They just wanted what I felt was best for me, and what they thought was best for me, And I think if you've got a good stability of family and friends and obviously agents nowadays, if you've got all that directly in the right way, that can make your decision easier as a kid. Because as a kid, it can be so easily just, I'll go to Newcastle, I'll go there, But when you think about the bigger picture of things, it's better to really try and think. But I've got to admit, it is a difficult decision.
Yeah, I bet. And as you said, Steve McLaren was the manager of Middlesbrough at the time when you signed as a youngster. I remember growing up, Middlesbrough were winning the Carling Cup in 2003-04 at the Millennium Stadium, that win over Bolton. But you were part of quite a successful youth side, winning the FA Cup 4-0 on aggregate, a 3-0 and 1-0 win over Aston Villa, bouncing back from losing to Man United in the final the year before. What was that like for you as a player winning the FA Youth Cup?
Well, do you know what? I was involved in the squad throughout, but I was only 13-year-old, and it was like an under-17 competition. So I was like a baby in terms of that. So what the club were wanting me to do was get experience along the way. I was always fast-tracked through age groups and levels like that. So to actually be in and around the players that I was from such a young age was massive for me. And I think that was probably the biggest part of my development, playing with such good players that we had, so coming through at Middlesbrough at that time.
Yeah, obviously there was a lot of quality players. Just looking at kind of some of the players that took part in that final against Aston Villa, we've got Adam Johnson. Maybe the less said about him, the better. James Morrison, David Wheater, both in the Middlesbrough team that day. And on the other side, you had Gary Cahill. Obviously, he's still playing just now. Gabby Agbonlahor was up front for Aston Villa, and then Scottish football fans might recognise this name. Bobby Olejnik was in goal. Obviously, had time up here at both Falkirk and Motherwell. So, like you said, you were playing with some quite quality players at the time as well.
That's right. Yeah, it was. It was throughout the whole journey to the Youth Cup final. I came across lads who have gone on to have brilliant careers, and you've just named a few there. I remember playing in the first team for Middlesbrough and swapping shirts with Agbonlahor, so I've got his here, So there's I didn't actually remember that he was involved in the youth game, but it was a fantastic achievement for the club, and probably that 3 to 5 years for Middlesbrough in terms of the youth development, the Carling Cup and the UEFA Cup final is the biggest and best period probably in the whole history. And also for me to have played a small part in that was brilliant. And like I say, for my development at that time, playing with top quality players and also playing against these quality players, because you used to, it's obviously all changed now with the under-23 system, and for me I think it's a way, I don't agree with that. I think it's better to have the reserve team football, what we used to have. I think development of kids, you just skyrocket through, because obviously you're playing against better players all the time, and that was something as well where all these type of lads were involved in that, so it was a brilliant time for the club. Me at that age, being 13, to be involved in, like I say, 12, 13-year-old, to be involved in something like that and being in around them players was massive.
Yeah, and you just touched on there the run to the UEFA Cup final. How much exposure, obviously at that young age, did you and the rest of that youth setup have around the Carling Cup run to the final and the UEFA Cup? Were you guys kind of allowed to interact with the first team? Did you get to any of these games?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was at the Carling Cup final. I think I was 14, I think at the time. So the club organised buses for all the academy players and parents to go down. So we went down. That was brilliant. That was at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, and then the UEFA Cup final as well, which I think was the following year. Again, the club organised us all to go out there. So going across there was fantastic, and it was against Sevilla, and just at the time Sevilla were top draw, and they're still the UEFA Cup specialists, they seem to win it every year. So it's not a mean thing, to lose to them, but it was fantastic era for the club. But yeah, it was brilliant that they looked after us all in terms of getting to those finals,
You mentioned your development there, Josh. Obviously, at a very young age, you then started becoming involved with the first team, made your debut in a friendly against Carlisle and went on to score. Do you remember much about that? It must have been sort of very proud feelings, not only for yourself, but for your family, and proving yourself right that you were correct to sort of stay with Middlesbrough. That was best for your development. Yeah,
it was. I mean, I actually forgot about that, so thanks for reminding us the Carlisle. It was brilliant, to just for what Steve McLaren said was when I eventually signed that contract at Middlesbrough, then when I decided I was going to be there, and he said you'll be with the first team straight away, you'll be with the reserves, the first team, and we want to get you straight in there. And lo and behold, the first day, that was it. I was with the first team and with the reserves and involved and playing. So played a lot of games in pre-season at 16, just left school, then was involved with the reserve team throughout, and it was fantastic, and we had some top players then, Middlesbrough, some of the best players, like I said, I keep saying the best time they've had in that history. So like I say, I think the best thing for me was being around these players, I remember playing reserve team football and with Mendieta, just unbelievable player in person, and he brought me on loads playing with him. But it was fantastic.
Is it true you were knocking on the door asking why he was playing ahead of you?
No, that's not quite true. Not that. But it was, you know, what happened then the first year at Middlesbrough, because everything in my career from, like I say, 12-year-old pushed on with all the age groups and reserve team football, I was always playing above myself. So when I found myself playing at my own age, I thought I was doing something wrong, you know? So I would ask the question, what am I doing wrong? Do you know? And obviously I wasn't doing anything wrong. It was just, that's what sometimes happens, you know, as a young lad, you've got to bide your time. And that was that was probably my biggest downfall, you know, like sometimes I would just want far too much too soon, not like from a big-headedness, but just an always driven and determined. I want to do better. I want to do more, you know. And then obviously injuries then on top of that, and trying to deal with everything was hard. But no, I was never asking to play ahead of Mendy. I think I would have been very daft to say that.
That would have been bold, yeah. Steve McClaren, however, did stay true to his word, and you made your debut for Middlesbrough, or sort of professional debut for Middlesbrough, off the bench against Fulham. Do you remember much about that? I can imagine it was probably quite a whirlwind at the time at such a young age.
Yeah, I do, yeah. I mean, it was one of them where I thought it wasn't going to happen, because I'd been, like I say, involved with the first team throughout, training-wise, and reserve team football, always playing well for the reserves, and then picking up injuries when there seemed to be opportunities to go in the first team, and other young lads who were a bit older than me, but then would get an opportunity. And I thought, I've missed my turn. You know, I missed quite a lot of that season with injuries, and it was Fulham, the last game of the season. And I thought, well, it's obviously now or never really for this season. But fortunately enough, I was in the squad and came on for the last half hour or so. So it was my mum and dad were both there. So it was a very proud moment for them. A massively proud moment for me, because it was something I'd worked so hard for, I'd say probably from about 12, 13-year-old to then try and get to that point. It was brilliant, you know. So a memory I'll never forget. We've got this shirt framed in my parents' house, and it's had really good memories.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Now, obviously, we're going to come on to your time at Aberdeen in a little bit. You also had a loan spell at Bournemouth as well before returning back to Middlesbrough, where you played your first full 90 minutes, starting in a 2-1 win over Barrow in the FA Cup, before a week later playing against Sunderland. Calum will have to remind me what the correct derby is, because Wikipedia put it down as the wrong one.
Teesweir,
Calum.
Teesweir derby,
yeah, the Teesweir derby. What was that like, coming back and, you know, playing in the FA Cup? You know, obviously it's seen as this, you know, prestigious tournament down in England. Maybe kind of lost a bit of that magic in recent seasons, but for you, obviously, again, as a youngster, getting your first start, because did you score in that game as well?
In the Barrow game?
Yeah.
No, I didn't score in the Barrow game. I got man of the match in that, and it was, and that was brilliant, you know, because again, I came back from Aberdeen and came back that season, and there was a lot of clubs that wanted us to go on loan, and I just said no, I wasn't going anywhere. I thought I'd jumped the gun far too many times, and I wanted to stay at Middlesbrough because I knew I was good enough, and I knew I was mentally ready, you know, like I just, with what I'd gone through with loan spells and injuries, I knew it was time that I just stayed where I was, you know. And it took until Christmas. I still feel it should have been before then, but it was Christmas, you know, and it was brilliant to play in the FA Cup. As you know, for me, it's still one of the best competitions to play in. You still see now with the teams that are in the next rounds, and, you know, beating Premier League teams. It's massive, you know. And Barrow at the time came to Middlesbrough. We were struggling that season, and they came actually, and we only beat them 2-1. But for me personally, it was again another milestone that I'd reached, you know, starting a game for the first team in a competitive game and doing quite well, you know. So it was brilliant.
Yeah, and obviously Middlesbrough getting a fantastic result just the other week there at Old Trafford as well. But like I said, you played in that game against Sunderland. What was that derby game like? Obviously the games in the Northeast we tend to see up here is Newcastle, Sunderland. How was that game against Sunderland viewed on the terraces? Is it just as big as playing Newcastle, if not bigger?
No, I think obviously the Newcastle Sunderland one is the biggest derby. Being honest, Newcastle I'm a Newcastle fan. When we play Middlesbrough, when Newcastle play Middlesbrough, sorry, it's obviously it's a derby game, but it's more looked upon by the Middlesbrough fans that they want to beat Newcastle. Newcastle, it's not the be all and end all. Sunderland's and Middlesbrough is a bit more heated than what Newcastle Middlesbrough is. So I mean, it was again another local derby. So for me to play in that, and that was brilliant. But just unfortunate the way it kind of went. Just 5 minutes in, I fractured my ankle 5 minutes into the game, and just nightmare. You just think, right, I've cracked it. I've done well the week before. I'm starting here, but setbacks, that's what football is. The ups and downs are unbelievable, but the atmosphere then was fantastic. And again, to be 18, 19 and involved in games like that was brilliant.
At Middlesbrough, you did end up working under both Southgate and Strachan, Gordon Strachan that is. What were your thoughts on sort of both managers at the time? And was there any sort of major differences? Obviously, we've seen their careers since then go slightly differently.
Yeah, huge. And I mean, there was huge differences between them. In my opinion, Gareth Southgate was a real man manager. He was brilliant at talking to the players. For me personally, I don't think Strachan knew how to talk to anyone, never mind footballers. He was very, very. I don't know. I learned a lot from him. I'm not going to lie. I learned a lot from him in terms of how I wouldn't do things. Like he's had a decent enough career at Celtic, but I think coming down to Middlesbrough at a time when Strachan came, he wanted to change things far too quick. And make his own stamp on the club, and I just don't think for me, he just kind of lost the dressing room as quick as he arrived. It was where when you had Southgate, even though he was very inexperienced, and maybe this was his downfall. He was maybe whenever you were left out the team, he would tell you why. So you had so much respect for him, but maybe that sometimes you don't need to be told all the time why you're not playing. So obviously it sounds like I'm slating Strachan there, but it's just when I try and compare the two of them, very chalk and cheese in that sense. That's just my opinion, that I'm sure there'll be players out there who say otherwise, but for me, Strachan just didn't know how to talk to people, he just came across arrogant to me.
Fair enough.
It's your opinion at the end of the day. Everyone's entitled to their own.
Yeah, I do remember him bringing in a lot of players from Scotland as well when he came down.
Well, that's what happened, So he brought a lot of players from Scotland and a lot of players who, no disrespect, weren't really getting a game for Celtic. He just seemed to bring them down to Middlesbrough. And then, don't get us wrong, he brought some good players. Barry Robson in particular was fantastic. One of the best players that I played with in that time, in that championship era. I thought he was excellent. But, he brought in a few others. And then obviously Tony Mowbray was the Celtic manager who got rid of them all. Strachan then got sacked and they brought Mowbray to Middlesbrough. So Mowbray had them all again, So Middlesbrough were just in a kind of limbo situation for a couple of years with players that they didn't want, but they just couldn't get rid of. But it was probably a tricky spell for them, to say the least.
So were you there when Mido was there?
I was there with Mido, yeah. So Mido was there when we were in the Premier League. Mido signed, and he was a very a huge character, to say the least. Some of the things he would fluctuate from one extreme to the other. So he'd be the most dedicated professional you'd see ever around a transfer window, and then if he didn't get a move, that was it. He'd sack it off and he'd put on about 2 stone, and it was I think that Southgate had to deal with him, and I think I'm just talking out, not out of turn, but in my opinion, from what I've seen, I thought it was maybe too much for him to take on at that time with players like that. Great lad, great player, great in the change room for the lads, but I think he was a nightmare for the staff.
Yeah, some of the stories you hear Andy Halliday say on Open Goal about him are just incredible.
You're not wrong there. Like, it was because Andy was one of the players who Gordon Strachan brought down. There was a lot of, the change room was just so different. There was players that they had on big money from the Premier League, the likes of Ludo and Afonso Alves. Then you had young lads coming through, like myself. You then had players in between who were wanting to get moves away. So your likes of Adam Johnson, who else? Stewie Downing. And then you had a load of Scottish players come down. And it was just, the change room was just, it wasn't, I don't know, in a way it almost was divided, because it was like, we went from one manager who, like I say, was so open with you and told you how he saw it, whether you believed him or not, but he was always opening up front with you, to another manager who would just turn your back on you in the corridor, So it was, it just didn't really work, the Strachan era. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know it's probably like a long time ago, and this is a bit of a reach maybe, but do you think perhaps Middlesbrough could still be suffering from that? Because obviously Newcastle bounced back straight away and got straight back into the Premier League, and then obviously they had a relegation since then, but for the most part have been a Premier League club, whereas Middlesbrough, was a couple seasons of those in limbo and they've not managed to get back into the Premier League since. I don't know. It just seems bizarre. Yeah,
well, I mean, it does. It has a knock-on effect. I mean, from when Middlesbrough got relegated, when I was there, when Southgate got sacked, Middlesbrough were like a point behind Newcastle, So it was Newcastle, and that was in the Championship when Southgate got sacked. So for us, we all thought if you're going to get sacked, you sack the manager when you get relegated, But the knock-on effect that then had in terms of all the players coming in, being sent down, like I say, from Tony Mowbray, who didn't want them, and then Stratton getting sacked, and then Tony Mowbray coming, and then he's having to try and probably get on with these players, which he's told aren't good enough for up in the SPL, but then he's asking them to try and get into the Premier League. It's like, and then, it took, I can't remember how long it took, but I think it was about maybe 5 or 6 seasons before Middlesbrough actually came back. But then they went straight back down again, So it had a massive knock-on effect, definitely.
We have mentioned Gareth Southgate. It was him that gave you a new deal, and obviously he's gone on to, well, thankfully he's not won anything yet, but he's done pretty well. I'll give him that much. Did you sort of feel that he would go on to have a career like he has had so far?
Well, being honest, I mean, I never thought he would go on and be England manager. I thought he was good with his players, and I thought he liked youth. He liked giving youth an opportunity when it was right. But I do feel that England job is made for him. Now, I can see him winning something with England. I know you probably are very disappointed in me saying that, but I can see him winning something with England. Not maybe because he's the best tactically. I think he's just got unbelievable players in his hands, and I think he's brilliant with players in terms of speaking to them. And I don't know, when you see his interviews, I mean, whether you're English, Scottish, or whatever, when you listen to him speak, the biggest thing I always found about him, he was a brilliant listener. So whether you were me, you, Cleaner, whoever speaking to him, he listened, and it wasn't like he just brushed you off. And I think he's a real people's person, and you can't not like him, And I think the players that he's got there, well, yes, I don't take nationality away from it, but I think you probably ask 95% of the English population, and they're really happy with him, because he's just a real people's person. And I think obviously he's got good coaches around him. He was a good coach as well, but he always had good coaches around him. And obviously now with England, I always feel the biggest part of football is man management. It's like any walk of life. If your boss is an idiot, you're not going to try your best. If your boss is someone you respect, well, you're going to break your back for, And he always comes across, and he always did come across like that when he was a player, you wanted to impress him when he was in the gym stretching and he was doing all these yoga and things, you know, and you think, wow, he's 36 and had the career he's had and he's doing all this. And so you then want to go in the gym and show him that you could do things, and do you know what I mean? And then obviously out on the football pitch when he was your manager. So I think now with being England manager, I think it's made for him. Now I still don't know whether he's ready or to be a Premiership manager. Now I know that sounds crazy when I'm saying how good he is with players, but I think it's totally different when you're put under the microscope of signing players and dealing with. I think when you look at that England team that he inherited, the likes of Rooney, who else was in there? There was Joe Hart, there was a Lampard, Gerrard, that were all coming to the end of their career. Big personalities, so it was almost a revamp. And he was the 21s manager before, so he's seen all these coming through. So I think it just fitted hand in hand, really. But don't get us wrong, he's done fantastic. And me as an Englishman, long may he continue, you know, as England manager.
Yeah, we'll see how the World Cup goes. But in January 2008, you did eventually join Aberdeen. It was towards the end of the January transfer window. Was that deal on the table throughout the course of that transfer window, or was it something that kind of was rushed through towards the end of that transfer window?
It was actually, they tried to take myself and Shawnee Aluko at the start of the season, so that Shawnee was allowed to go. I wasn't allowed to go at the start of the season. So I first knew of Aberdeen's interest then. And then when it came to January, I'd been injured pretty much all of that season. I'd only played one reserve game, and Aberdeen's interest was still there. And there was a couple of other clubs interested to take us from down south. But when I looked at the fixtures that Aberdeen had coming up, you know, the Middlesbrough as a club wanted us to go to Coventry. So Coventry were a championship side at the time. They wanted us to go there. But they were like a struggling championship side. And I looked at the likes of Celtic, Rangers, the UEFA Cup ties, and I just thought, oh, that just sounds brilliant. You know, it sounds brilliant. And it was me who pushed that more. Middlesbrough wanted us to go somewhere else, but I said I'd rather go here. And they sort of just backed us and said, right, you can go there then. So that's kind of how that came about.
Yeah, well, that kind of answers the question about, did it take much convincing to come to Aberdeen? Just as well, we got drawn against Bayern Munich then. But what was your overall kind of thoughts or maybe expectations on what you were probably going to be facing when you came to Scotland? Did you expect the standard to be kind of similar, maybe better or worse? I know the Scottish game is not always viewed on the same level down south.
Well, I was really good friends with Shawnee, so I kept in touch with Shawnee throughout that season. Always kind of looked out for his results, how he was getting on and things like that. So I was always up to date a little bit with how Aberdeen were doing. And he said, you know, it's a great city, Josh. The fans will be great with you, and the lads are brilliant. There's some really good lads here, and it's and obviously there's some big games. And I didn't actually know probably much about the standard at all. I mean, obviously as a kid, you see the likes of Larson and things like that playing up there. But in terms of Aberdeen as a club, I didn't really know anyone other than Shawnee, really, at the time when I went up there. So I was kind of going into it just unknown, really. But it was the standard of football. Yeah, the quality maybe, isn't as high as the English Premier League. But my God, in terms of the pace and the franticness of it was, you know, like some of the games, I was like, where's the ball? Do you know what I mean? It was like you're trying to drop deep to get on the ball and it's hit long. Like it's just a different type of football. Now, that's not to say I know people look at it as lesser quality, but it's just a different style of football, you know. And it's, I think that I know for a fact that Aberdeen spell in my career is what got us into the team in Middlesbrough in the Premier League the following year, without a doubt, because it just made us grow up, you know, from being that academy-style player, one who wants to get on the ball everywhere on the pitch. But you can't do that in professional football, you know. You need to be clever in where you go, your movements, and your tackles, getting elbows in the back of the head, and like getting used to all these type of things which you don't come across. Yeah. It was brilliant. Loved it. Absolutely loved Aberdeen.
Just while I've got the question in my head, we will carry on with your time at Aberdeen, and obviously that goal, mainly because Lee Mayer said, if we don't ask you about it, you will bring it up. Another player that came from the northeast, playing in the same position as you, Matty Longstaff. His time at Aberdeen did not go as well. Not only he'd hoped, but we'd hoped at all. Do you know much about that situation? He's now gone on loan to League Two. It was very surprising.
Yeah, it was. When I seen that he went to Aberdeen, I thought, he'll do really well. I couldn't not see him not playing. Because when he came into the team at Newcastle, he did reasonably well. He did, and got himself a new contract and did well. So then when I seen he went to Aberdeen, I think. Again, I don't know him at all. But I think sometimes he was in a different position to me when he went to Aberdeen. I was a young kid with something to prove.
Yeah,
he's on the other side of that now. So he got a good contract at Newcastle. He's probably paid off that he's going to Aberdeen. Do you know what I mean? So again, I don't know him. It might have been completely different, but the mindsets of myself to him were, I had a huge point to prove, I really just had to play, do well. I had to get in that team at Middlesbrough. He'd had an opportunity in Newcastle, and seeing that there's obviously a lot of money coming to the club. I know this has happened since then, but I don't know. It could be like that. I could be completely wrong. But I've never really seen him play other than the highlights I've seen for Newcastle, and he always seemed to do all right. So I was a bit surprised that he never took off from up there. But the looks of things, Aberdeen haven't really done too well as a team all season. So it might not just be himself. It might be that I went into a good team. He's maybe gone into more of a struggling side. But playing Scott Brown, you would have thought, I don't know, would have brought him. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know the kid, but unfortunately for him, it hasn't worked out.
I just felt I thought I'd ask whilst we have you here, but I do agree. When he came up, I like to watch Newcastle. Got family down there. I was very excited. Obviously, the goals against Manchester United, and I thought, oh, brilliant, we've got a player. I'm not quite sure that's happened. Just obviously didn't work out for one way or another. But we'll get back to yourself, Josh. You end up playing 13 games for Aberdeen between joining in January and then the end of the season. Were you a little bit frustrated to only feature 13 times for the club?
I was, because the hardest thing for me was I think probably setting such a high standard so quickly to then not being brilliant like all the time. So it was like the first, few games went really well. Remember a couple of man of the matches, and like you say, the Bayern Munich game, everything just started off fantastic. But the thing for me is I wasn't really fit. So when I came there, I only played in terms of match fitness. I'd only played one reserve game all season, and then my first proper game was Hamilton, I think, in the cup.
Yeah, you made your debut just 2 days after signing. Yeah. That's
right, yeah. So Hamilton in the cup, and then there was a game we played, I think it was the semi-final on the Tuesday, and then we played someone else on, I think it was Celtic on the Saturday, and then we played Bayern Munich on the Wednesday, and it was just massive game after massive game. And I think maybe after about 5 or 6 games, I was just almost worn out type of thing, which sounds crazy to feel like that. But looking back, when Jimmy Calderwood then took us out the team, I just felt he then took us out for too long. He said he was going to, because he said he just needed to get us back to that. But I thought, well, maybe 2 or 3 games, but not 5 or 6. So it took a while to get going again. But then when I did get going again, it was brilliant. And I felt, had I been there from the start of the season, I would have played. I think I would have, if I'd been fit, I would have played the majority of the games. And it would have been totally different. But I say totally different. It probably couldn't have. Some of the things couldn't have went any better, So it was brilliant.
Yeah, it was maybe just the tombola ball didn't come out in that way for some of those games, as we had that joke with Lee Mayer. But as you said there, you made that debut just a couple of days after signing in the 1-0 Scottish Cup win over Hamilton. What was that like for you? Obviously, that game was at Pittodrie, being in front of the home fans for the first time. As I remember from that game briefly, I remember, quite a lively performance from yourself in the centre of the park, always kind of wanting the ball and looking to drive forward and get a shot on goal. I think you were actually quite close to scoring as well, if memory does serve. So
I should have scored.
So what was your kind of like overriding emotion from that debut?
Again, it was just a point to prove, like that, just that bit between my teeth. I thought, right, here I am, like you're playing in front of, I don't know what the capacity, I can't remember the capacity of Aberdeen, but it was a good atmosphere we had that day. And it was something I'd had a loan spell at Bournemouth in League One the season before for a month. But I don't know, the atmosphere was just different. I think the fans obviously knew the games coming up. They knew the games were all big games. It was, I don't know, it just felt real football to me, and I felt really proud to be there. And I think I appreciated how big of a club it was when I got there. And it was just, I was just so determined to do well. And when I got the opportunity to play as quickly as I did, I just wanted to take it, because I knew, to be honest, I wasn't thinking any further than that game. But I also thought, well, if I do well here, then it's just going to carry on, and it was just brilliant. I loved it. Loved the atmosphere. Fans were great with us. Lovely city. It was fantastic. I just settled in straight away.
Yeah, and I think, as fans, when we get loan signings into the club, if we can see the passion and determination, that player that's coming and almost bought into the way that us as fans treat our club, they're immediately kind of taken to. And I think that was something that came across with your performances in particular on that debut, and then of course that night against Bayern Munich. But going into that game against Bayern Munich, as you kind of touched on there, we had some big games, unfortunately, on the wrong end of the result in that semi-final against Dundee United. Quite a chastening defeat. It was a 5-1 defeat on the Sunday before against Celtic. What was the mood in the dressing room leading up to that Bayern Munich game? Was it just forget what's happened, or was there a bit of nerves going into that game?
I think there was a bit of both. I think me personally, I think being so young, I probably wasn't any more nervous than I would have been for any other game. I think the older lads looked at it and thought, this is my last chance of playing against a real top side, So I think that determination was brilliant, because we had the older lads in the group who thought this could be the biggest game of their career. And then we had the younger lads who are maybe naive enough to think this is going to happen again. So we're thinking like, right, let's just go and enjoy it. So it was like you mix that together and you've got a group of players that are all determined to do well, So it was like, just the build up to the game was I just remember like walking to the shop and the people said, why are you up? Why are you here? Like, you've got to be prepared for this game. And I'm thinking, it's in 2 days' time. Do you know what I mean? It's but no, everyone was buzzing about the game, and they'd remind you of what happened in the past with Bayern Munich, and it's it's such a massive game. Everyone kept saying, and I lived with, at the time I stayed in a flat with Chris Mcguire, and I remember we'd been playing the week before on FIFA, like as Bayern Munich, So you're like you're playing these players, and then you're actually playing them in real life. So it was. I don't even know how they were in the UEFA Cup. They must have got knocked out of the Champions League, because that squad they had was incredible.
Yeah. I can't remember either, but I just remember being absolutely buzzing at that draw, thinking I'm getting to go to Munich to watch Aberdeen play, let alone them coming to Pittodrie. And I remember, because it was a 5 or 5:30 kickoff at Pittodrie to suit German TV. I just remember finding any excuse possible to get out the last 2 periods of school on the Thursday, so I could bunk off with my mates and get ready for the game and just get that excitement beforehand.
Yeah. Oh no, I can imagine. Like it was brilliant. Like the build up and the game itself. Everyone just played really well, and it was, the fans were class. The night after was brilliant. Like it was just just absolutely. I can't describe it any other word than fantastic. Because it was fantastic.
We've danced around it enough. As much as I will have a question about what living with Chris Mcguire was like, I think I've got to give you a chance now. That goal, it's lived long in my memory. I was only 8 years old at the time, but I was behind the goal that he scored in, and a memory I'll treasure for the rest of my life. So first of all, thanks, Josh. But I'll give you the stage now. Talk us through it. It must have just been absolutely incredible.
It was, and I mean, we were talking just before about the Hamilton game, and maybe had a couple of opportunities to score. I'd had a few efforts at goals in the games before and hadn't scored, and never, ever had I thought in the build-up to that game that I would score, Like, I just didn't think that. I just thought, right, just go and play well. Never thought about scoring. And then we had a free kick on the halfway line, and for some reason, Sevi took it, Scott Severin, and normally one of the centre-halves would take it there, and Sevi would be higher up with me, and I'd be in a different position, but he took it. So I then went and stood in a different position, and we won a few headers in the box. I think Lee Miller won a header, and Shawnee brought it down. And then I just remember there was me, and I think it was Barry Nicholson, who were on the edge of the box, and I was screaming at Shawnee, and I was just screaming at him, give it to me, and unfortunately he did, and just managed to bend it in the far corner, and it was just unbelievable, Like, still gives you goosebumps now when you almost try and relive it. It was brilliant.
Yeah, but before we started this interview, I did watch the goal back as well as Sonny's as well, and I just got very excited. It was quite sad, really, but we've got to ask as well. Sorry. We spoke to Lee Mayer. That's not out yet, so make sure you're subscribed or followed wherever you're tuning in for that. He managed to get Philip Lamb's shirt after the game. Did you come home with any? Obviously, we knew you got Gabriel Bonlahor's from that game in the FA Youth Cup. Managed to grab yourself any shirts?
Do you know what? I didn't, and reason being, I just didn't really think. Do you know what I mean? I didn't think. And that's what the only regret I've got about that game is not getting the shirts, because there was that many to choose from. You could, no matter who you got, you were getting the top player, and I come away with none, and it was just I didn't. So massive regret of the night, because that would have been framed somewhere.
Oh yeah, certainly.
I suppose still a good memory to have. Scoring against Bayern Munich, that top that your own top would have been memorable enough to have. But what was the night out after? Like, obviously, drawing with Bayern Munich 2-2. The fact that we were still in the tie going to Munich, was it a good night out?
What do you think? It was brilliant. I can't remember the names of what the bars were. I think one might have been called Purple Lounge or something, or something.
Pearl Lounge. What a place!
What a place that was. That place just erupted in there. That was brilliant. It was not everyone went out. There was only a few of us, but the ones that did, we had a night that was brilliant, and actually really interacting with the fans properly. It was. It was fantastic, like real good laugh. Everyone in high spirits, the whole city buzzing. It was like you couldn't not go. Do you know what I mean? It was class. I just remember getting a shower at the ground and having a text on my phone. I was like, right, that's it. Rushing home, getting changed, and I was out. So no, it was brilliant.
Did that night kind of dawn on you just how big a club Aberdeen really was?
Yeah, like it was to come across, like I said, the likes of Bayern Munich. It's very rare that you do, unless you're at one of the top clubs in world football, you know. So for me to then experience that with Aberdeen, I was like, oh, bloody hell. Like, it wasn't until after the game that I realised how big of a club this was, you know. Like, and I thought that when I played Celtic, I thought, wow, this is a big club now. But then I also thought, well, every club has to play Celtic. Do you know what I mean? But then when we played Bayern Munich, not every club does, you know, and it was like, here we are, you know, and it was I just remember the atmosphere that night. I remember coming out of the walkway where the players come out, and I couldn't really see the fans. There was just that much smoke everywhere, and the noise was incredible. And it was like that's when the nerves for me really kicked in. You know, the adrenaline really kicked in. I was like, wow, this is big. This, you know. So it was. And then obviously the performance and the atmosphere and everything that followed, you know, it was incredible.
Yeah, it really wasn't. And I suppose the fact that I know Calum's eager to ask about living with Chris Mcguire, but the fact that we obviously went to Munich still in the tie, I think there was 10,000 Aberdeen fans, you know, made the trip over the week after. You know, for me, at just 16 years old, being lucky enough to be one of the Red Army that travelled, my first experience of a European away trip. You played an hour that night. Obviously, we didn't get the result that we wanted. But again, for you as a young player, what was that like, being in the Allianz Arena again, coming up against those players once again?
You know, it was a little bit of frustration, to be honest, because reason being, I did quite well the week before in the first game, and then in the second game, I just thought I would play centre mid. And we'd worked on playing 4-3-3 against them, and then the day of the game. Now I don't know if this was the reason why he changed the team, but Jimmy Calderwood's quite a character anyway. I'm sure you obviously know. And I remember we were in Munich and we trained the night before in the stadium, and you think, wow, this is unbelievable, you know. And you're just imagining what's going to happen on the pitch, you know, like certain passes or whatever. Anyway, day of the game, we all went for a walk. Now, this German fan came up to us. Obviously, I don't know if he wasn't a Bayern fan, but he was just this German fan, and he's like asking who the manager is. And he's saying to Jimmy Calderwood, you've got to play 4-4-2. You have to play 4-4-2. And I'm thinking, everyone's going, who's this clown? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, as if we're going to play that, we'll get hammered. And manager Jimmy Calderwood calls a meeting, like as he normally does, names the team. Like I say, we'd all worked on playing who was going to play centre mid. I think it was me, Sevi, and Barry Nicholson were going to play, and then he changed it and he put me on the right wing and Shawnee on the left wing, and he said, he wanted me to track Philip Lahm, and I was like, so I was like, mate, it was. I just looked and I thought, you want me to track the best left back in the world up and down this wing? And he's going, your youth and your enthusiasm will just stay with him. And I thought, it just dampened it for me, because I thought, well, I'm not going to affect the game. I mean, I might not have from centre mid, but at least I would have been in my position, you know.
Yeah.
But to then be on the right wing, and I just thought, it's not going to help us, you know. And it was, and I remember from the kickoff, I think they hit the bar within about 10 seconds, and we all looked at each other and we thought, wow, like what's happening tonight? Like, it's going to be a long night, and probably the goals we conceded, I felt maybe 3, possibly 4 of them could have been saved, you know. So it was like I think we could have done better. We could have done better, but we were playing world-class players, you know. And I think to get 2 results would have been too much to ask for, you know.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I said this to Lee Mayer as well when we spoke to him, was I can still remember the speed in which Lucio's free kick smashed into the back of the net from what felt like just on the edge of the box. I think his free kick was, but also the chance that Darren Mackie had. I'm not sure if it was yourself, but someone played him a brilliant ball through, and he's 1-on-1. But Darren Mackie, when he has too much time on his hands, doesn't know what to do, and agonisingly went past the post.
I know, and he's facing Khan as well. So I mean, it was. It was, but that was one. We can see him racing through. I think it was maybe only 1-0 at the time.
It was. Yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I thought, well, come on, Daz, come on, and everyone's like, it just unfortunately went wide, and it was, like I say, to get 2 positive results was too much to ask.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of overall, I think that season, not just that Bayern Munich game, all the games before in the UEFA Cup, I think the club, the players, the staff, every single one of them did the club and the city proud.
Mm.
It was great again to play another small part in that journey that season.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Chris Mcguire time. I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with Chris Mcguire. Loved him at Aberdeen, then he played for Sunderland. Was not happy. Then he left Sunderland, scored against them and celebrated right in front of their manager. Back to loving him. So we're on good terms just now. Yeah. He is a bit of a character. I think that's well known. What was living like him with? That must have been interesting.
Do you know what, Chris? He was quite quiet, like back then. I mean, he was the same age as me. He was quiet. He was. I think his nickname was Bebo or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He used to get called Bebo. So again, I'm not too familiar with that, but he was.
Those listening will be well aware of why he's called Bebo.
Right. Okay. I just remember that sticking out to us. But he was. He was a nice lad, and he was one who. Is he from Aberdeen? Was he from? I can't remember. Is he?
Glasgow, I think. Yeah, down by Glasgow.
But obviously, being in the youth, to come through the youth team there, I think there was a lot of pressure on him. Or he seemed to feel as if there was. But in terms of ability and ability-wise, he was excellent. He did really well, and he broke into the team, played a lot of games. He was a good lad to live with. He was no problem at all. He was good. I like Chrissy. I've got a lot of time for him.
Who are the other players during your time at Aberdeen? Obviously, you were friends with Shoney Aluko as well. Who are the other players for you that kind of stood out in your time at Aberdeen?
Other than those, I mean, there was the lad Dan Smith, who didn't play that much, but Dan's still one of my really good mates now. But Lee Miller and Lee Mayer, they were the two that I got on brilliantly with and still speak to now, and it's I met up with Lee Miller probably 6-7 months ago, just before he was starting his barbering type stuff that he's doing. But they were great lads in the changing room, and those two just looked after me from day one, really. So I'll always have a lot of time and respect for those two really good lads.
Yeah, and I suppose, just finally on your time at Aberdeen, what did your time at Aberdeen kind of mean to you, and in terms of how did that help you for the rest of your career?
Well, like I said before, I think that Aberdeen loan spell just made me grow up. Now, in terms of everything, so not just as a footballer, but as a person, because having to deal with the things that go alongside a professional footballer, where it's not always brilliant. You get a lot of sticks sometimes, you get dropped, you get left out the team when you feel you should be playing, you play when maybe others think you shouldn't. It's dealing with all the mental side of it, and I think it was a great club for me to be at, because I got to experience everything, really. I got to experience the highs, the lows, in terms of playing, then not playing, defeats in semi-finals, scoring against Bayern Munich, man the matches. I got everything kind of rolled into one, and to be involved with such a a group that are, I don't know what the word is, but, people would say like real workers, like just real top professionals in terms of they just wanted to do well for their families, do you know what I mean? It kind of not brought me down to earth because I was never big-headed, but it made us realise that I want to stay in that Premier League. I want to get that opportunity, I loved it. It was the best, I would say probably the best 3 or 4 months that I had in my career in terms of the whole scenario, just loved it.
Yeah.
And following the conclusion of your loan spell at Aberdeen, you then went on to captain the England under-20s at the World Cup, having previously captained them for the under-16s and under-17s. The tournament probably didn't go to plan, unfortunately, but it was a good squad containing Kieran Trippier, Ben Mee, and shout out to Jonathan Obika as well, St Mirren legend. That must have been an extremely, extremely proud moment for yourself and quite the experience, I can imagine.
It was. Are you still? Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah. It was brilliant. Like everyone dreams of playing, for your country and whatever, and playing in World Cups, and then to get the opportunity to go and captain them at the World Cup. It was a real proud moment for myself, my family, people close to us. Everything that I'd worked hard for in my career. To get to these moments, it was excellent, and it was just unfortunate the way the tournament went. The games were in Egypt, and we lost so many players with illness. It was so when we were playing games with lads that weren't really up to it. They were good players, but we had top players missing who've gone on and had massive careers. So it could have been completely different. But for myself, in terms of that status, to look back and think I was captain of England at a World Cup, it's brilliant. Great experience.
Yeah, not something that many people can actually say that they've done. Obviously, you did go back to Middlesbrough and did get some experience there in the Premier League, but unfortunately your time, kind of was cut short through a bit of injury problems as well. You ended up at Watford before loan spells at Northampton, Stevenage and Scunthorpe before eventually signing for Scunthorpe for a season, before again a season closer to home with Gateshead, where you got a fair amount of games under your belt. But then your career took a different path, and you headed off to India for a season with Bengaluru FC. What made you choose India, or why did that move to you appeal at the time?
A couple of things, really. There wasn't that many options left here in the UK, and mentally, I didn't go through a depression, but I went through a lot of low points in my career, in my early 20s. I mean, when I was 21 at Middlesbrough, I got a knee injury before I went to Watford, and it set off something in my knee a year or two down the line called patellar tendonitis, and it got to the point where I was at Scunthorpe and I couldn't train. So I was 22 years old and I wasn't fit enough to train, and it was lucky and thinking 2 years ago I was captain at a World Cup. Now I kind of train, and then we were going to get relegated at Scunthorpe. We got relegated. I was injured. I had no option really other than to sign at Gateshead and get some money. Do you know what I mean? It was. I went to Gateshead. I played games. I wasn't fit. I shouldn't have played. I was injured the majority of the time. And come the end of that season, I was actually thinking of packing in because I was my head was that just disillusioned with everything and feeling sorry for myself. Do you know what I mean? I just felt sorry for myself. And an opportunity came through a lad that I played with at Middlesbrough called John Johnson. He was out in India at a team called Bengaluru. And he said, look, our team's looking for a midfielder, because the manager was English, and Ashley Westwood was his name. And I'd come across him a couple of times before, and he said, Josh, he really likes you, he remembers you as a kid. So he wants to speak to you. And I just thought it was people being nice and whatever. So anyway, I went and spoke to him. It was actually the night before the playoff final. I'm sneaking out the hotel to go and speak to this manager about getting a move to India. You know, we've got this game, the final the next day. So I went and spoke to him and agreed everything with him in the back in his car. Just not the most professional of deals ever done, but agreed it there and then. And it was one of them moments where not just my career, my life was going to go one way or the other. I didn't know what I was going to do, and he knew about my injury, but he also said we don't play. So this was you signed from July till the following July, but the season didn't start until the January. So he said you've got like 5-6 months to get into shape. And that's what happened. I just knuckled down. We had some really good physios and treatment, and I think possibly even playing in the heat as well helped. You know, like just being away from everything. It just helped us a lot, and the season went fantastic. Like it was brilliant. You know, we won their equivalent of the FA Cup. We played in the Asian Champions League, but travel all of Asia, all of India. It was brilliant, and then signed another year. But unfortunately, the end of that season, that was it. My knee just couldn't cope anymore. And they just told us that I wouldn't play again. I shouldn't play again. So that was pretty much it. And but that was the spell in India. And then come back, and like I say, I had to get in the real world and try and get a job because football was gone, you know. So it was it was a difficult time. It was a difficult time, but I think the relief of actually being told you shouldn't play anymore, it took a lot of weight off my shoulders, because I knew I'd been playing for maybe 4 or 5 years with an injury that I shouldn't have played with, you know, or that was never going to get better.
Yeah. Despite that news, you did then sign for Edinburgh City in 2017, playing 43 games, scoring 5 goals. How did that sort of come about? A return to Scotland. How was that for you? Was it the perfect fit?
Well, it was actually my ex-partner and my 2 children are from Edinburgh. So when I came back from India, just came back here, and I was working at the time. I was doing like some labouring and some building stuff with my one of my pals, and I was picking up my daughter from my school, and the Edinburgh City manager was picking up his niece or someone from the school, recognised my face, and then just started talking to us. And he said, would you get back into football? And I said, well, I shouldn't really. But he said, but I said, I'm missing it. Like, and I mean, this was about a year after. So I'd been injured the full year of my second year in India. And then I just hadn't done anything really in terms of trying to get back in. When you're told you shouldn't, you just don't. But then when he said, look, we'd like to, if you can get yourself fit and see what you think, come and train and see what it's like. So I thought, why not? I mean, I was doing labouring work, and I was carrying loads of stuff around building sites, and I thought, surely I can get myself fit to play part-time, you know? So I did. I got myself a trainer. One of my friends was a PT, so we did some training in terms of trying to build my leg up without putting pressure on the knee, and loads of swimming type stuff. And then it come to the point where I was fit enough to go and train, and I went and trained, and I enjoyed it. And the manager, Gary Jardine, was brilliant, because he knew I couldn't train, even though it was only 2 nights a week, but it was on Astro. I said, there's no way I can train 2 nights. So I trained one night and would play Saturday, and it was class, you know. I loved it. It was like, I just felt, it was probably the one time in my career I felt there was no pressure on us anymore, you know, because people knew what I'd been dealing with, and then to come and still be wanted, I just felt, I felt probably the proudest I'd felt in my career, to, even though it was only part-time football, to come back after being told you shouldn't, or one said you can't, but, you know, it was, I kind of proving people wrong a little bit, you know. I mean, I was always injured, but it was, I still played, like you say, 40 odd games, in 2 or 3 years. So it was better than what I'd done before.
Yeah, and it must obviously be a sense of pride, the fact that you were then made club captain. But I'm sure people are wondering how Gary recognised you. Were you that guy that scored against Bayern Munich?
That's how it went. I think, honestly, it's the majority of memories of me in Scotland is that, it's which is brilliant, but it's also annoying because I think, God, like I did a little bit more than that game, but it was. But no, to be remembered for that in itself is great, Just so, but that's how kind of the conversation went.
And how did you get on in League Two? Obviously, you said you were only training once a week, and then playing on a Saturday. Because I believe the season that you signed for Edinburgh City was the season that they'd got promoted out of the Lowland League. So, was there kind of an expectation to go for promotion again, or for you was it just see how many games you can do that season?
Well, initially it was just me to come back in and start playing again and see how everything went. I never actually thought of anything beyond that season. But we had a really good team for that level. We had there was myself, there was Craig Beattie, Derek Riordan, Ryan Porteous was on loan from Hibs. It was a really good setup we had. And I think we ended up finishing, done quarters, but I think it was about 7th. So for a team that just came up, we weren't that far off being in the playoff positions. But then that season, the likes of Beats and Riordan, they retired. Porteous obviously went back to Hibs. And they changed the manager not long after that and just went down a bit of a different route in terms of, I felt they wanted too much too soon. I think and I think I'm sure they would say the same because that's how it went. But in terms of me playing and having that buzz, anyone who's played football, no matter what level you've been at, that changing room feeling you get of being with the lads is class. And for me, just to get that even one night a week again, it was brilliant. So it was the time at Edinburgh. I've got real fond memories, and it was we played in some good games, and we played. I mean, we played Motherwell in the cup when I was there. And, Hamilton. So we still played some decent enough teams. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time there, but again, because of the state of my knee, it was never going to last that long, really. And that's just how it went. It got to the start of I don't know if it was the 2019 season, and that was it. I just knew by this point, I'd had 5 operations on my knee, and it was just, that was it. It was when I came back from it, I was in pain after about 2 weeks after of coming back and playing, so it was, I remember playing East. I'm saying I remember playing not East 5, someone else.
East Kilbride.
East Kilbride. Oh, it was East Kilbride or East Stirling, and I was playing them. And no disrespect to the lads you're playing against, but I could not get near anyone. I just couldn't move, and I was in so much pain. And I thought, nah, that was it. And even I come off the pitch and one of my boots had completely split in half, and I thought, that's a sign, just that's it. Put the boots in the bin, and that was it. I packed in for good at that point. But no, it was, I say for good. I'm still playing like on a Saturday now, but it's but I know they were great memories. I've got brilliant memories from football.
It is good to hear that. Obviously, every kid when they first start playing football, it's because they love it, and then it's sort of, despite all the highs and the lows with the injuries, it sort of went full circle where you got back to Edinburgh City and just playing it because you were enjoying
the game.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, Aberdeen recently played Edinburgh City and the infamous Josh Walker derby. Did you get the chance to catch the game?
I've seen the highlights. I was actually wanting to go up, but I've started coached at one of the local teams around here. So unfortunately, I couldn't go. But Edinburgh, I thought, give a good account of themselves. I mean, it was always going to be a tough ask. But, you know, like there's a couple of my pals that are playing in that team who, again, have had similar type things. You know, Danny Hanlon was coming through and Hibs doing really well. And he's been unfortunate with his injuries. But there's a few of them there at Edinburgh that are doing well. And it was good to see the club just even make a little bit money, you know, because as you know, everyone's been rocked with COVID and the lower clubs especially. So for them to get a tie like Aberdeen, I was really pleased to see that, because there's some good people at that club.
Yeah, and I suppose, you know, you've said like you kind of accepted being away from football. However, you can't quite keep away. You do some coaching with Whitehill Welfare in the East of Scotland League, but you've also got your own coaching business as well. Is that just based down in the Edinburgh area?
It is, yeah. It's something I started about 6 months after coming back from India. I say a year after India. I was doing so many jobs, like obviously being in football, that's all you ever do. So then when you just, that's it. I didn't have a clue what I was going to do anymore. So it was, I did a few things, labouring, I did a lot of things. And then it was one of the kids in my street is a Celtic fan, and his dad knew I'd played for Aberdeen. He just asked us, he said, look, will you go and take him and just work him on his left foot? He's struggling a bit with his left foot. I was like, of course. So I went and done it. He loved it. And he said, could we do it again? And before you knew it, his pal was coming and other pals, and I was coaching for them. And then they'd ask, could I go into their school and help? And I thought, why don't I do something coaching kids? And so I started a company called Foot Forward Coaching, and it's something that's just progressing quite nicely. It's you'll never replace playing. You can't replace playing. But to see a young kid, a boy, a girl, whether that's a kid who's an elite player who's in an academy, or it's someone who's like someone in my street just wanting to work the left foot, to see the improvement in them is massive, you know, and see the enjoyment in their face. It takes you back to their memories of you being a kid. And so I do a lot of stuff at a school called George Watson's in Edinburgh. Take a lot of all the football there, and I do a lot of one-to-one coaching. I've got kids I coach who play at Hibs and Hearts. And then I do other things like after school clubs, parties, and so it's everything to do with football, but just in terms of the coaching side of it now. It's the development of kids. And because I can relate to every single one of them because of the experiences I've had, you know, it's not just sometimes a technical session. It can be an actual session where I had a session with a parent and a kid who just wanted to ask what happened, and you know, like so they can actually experience like what I've kind of been through, you know, like kind of what we're doing now. It was so I love the job that I do. I never thought I would find after I finished playing footy a job that I would love doing, but I've got to say, like, probably since 21-year-old, I'm probably the happiest I've ever been in my life now, because everything I've got going in terms of my two children, my coaching, my foot forward coaching, and just being happy again. You know, it's I can't describe the turnaround and everything. So it has life's almost full circle again. But I'm the one trying to develop them kids now. So it's brilliant. Love it.
Yeah, and you know, Josh, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Red Tinted Glasses this evening. And Calum, I think, you know, what Josh says there really has come across someone that just loves and lives the game and has come full circle. And it's great to see. You know, it's not surprising somebody from somewhere like Newcastle that just has that passion for football.
Yeah, 100%. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Josh. It's also really, really encouraging hearing after what's happened after football as well. I think there is a lot of footballers who come out of once they've retired, they think, "Oh God, what am I going to do now?" And it can be a problem. So it is encouraging to hear that things are going very well for you.
Yeah. No, thanks very much, lads. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure. I feel 18 again, speaking about my youth, Bayern Munich and Pearl Lounge. What a brilliant evening this has been. But Josh, once again, thanks very much for joining us on Red Tinted Glasses.
Cheers, lads. Thank you.
Well, there you go. That is our former player interview with Josh Walker. A fascinating insight into his career and also time at Aberdeen. Calum, a truly enjoyable listen.
100%. I had a good time doing it. Thoroughly enjoyed talking about that goal. And always nice speaking to a Geordie as well.
Yeah, I knew you'd enjoy that element as well. As ever, if you have enjoyed the show today, remember to hit that like button. Leave us a comment with your feedback. What was your memories of that famous night against Bayern Munich? And if you are new to the channel, watching for the first time or listening, of course, remember to hit that subscribe button, follow button to get notified of all our latest content coming up. Thanks once again.
Thank you.